Hello, and welcome to Talking Torah Tidbits and Taboos with Libby, where I try to bridge gaps through everyday conversation with everyday people. I thought I would start off the podcast strong with the first episode being a little bit of insight into some of my current struggles and a little bit of my background, a little bit of my history, where I come from, and so on. So I was raised in the tri-state area. I was raised in Brooklyn, in Borough Park, to a non-Hasidic family. And for those of you who do not know, Borough Park is a fairly homogenous community of primarily Hasidic Jews. It didn't used to be like that. But with time, once I was already a kid, I grew up primarily with Hasidic neighbors. And I went to a very small school in Brooklyn that was only one parallel class per grade. And then I started a high school in New York for the first 2 years, which shut down before my 11th grade year. And I then went on to go to high school for my 11th and 12th grade year in Norfolk, Virginia, the wonderful community, very, very small. When I was there were only 12 girls in the entire school. And I graduated with one girl in my class. So the graduating class was 2 girls. And I then went on to seminary in Israel. I went to BNOS, which no longer exists. And when I finished seminary, started working. After seminary, a few years after, I decided that I could no longer live in New York. I really had enjoyed living out of town. I loved the communities and I loved the sense of belonging and the unity that I saw in all the incredible communities that I've visited over the years. So I decided to move out of my parents' house and I got an apartment in a lovely community and I lived on my own. I got a job, I moved, I got a car, my first car, I got my first apartment, I built all of my furniture, and I had an amazing couple of years. And then I met my husband through a friend, and we've been married for a year and a half now. And about 4 months into my marriage, I was struggling with my physical health a lot. It had been kind of a struggle for a little while before that. I was working at a company that there were very intense seasons. It was related to taxes, and so tax season comes around, and anyone in the tax field or accounting field knows how brutal it can be. As I was, preparing for my wedding, it became very stressful and it was physically draining and I was really struggling physically. And so I had noticed some changes where I was just really exhausted and I was really drained and I really struggled to wake up in the morning. And I thought that was, fairly normal because how many of us want to jump out of bed, so ecstatic to start work in the morning. Maybe there are a few people out there, but I think most people get used to the fairly monotonous tone of our lives where, you wake up, you go to work, you come home, you got to do all the things. So I thought, fairly normal. And I started thinking, this was at the end of 2023, that I really could have used some change in my life. I wanted a little bit of change of pace. I had gone to college several years before and I wasn't sure exactly what field I wanted to get into. And so I said, I'm going to get my bachelor's. I'm going to wait and kind of take my time, try a few different fields and see what I liked before I spent all that money on an education I wasn't sure I was going to use because as so many of us know, you spend, $50,000 on a master's degree and you end up working, in some other field you never anticipated. I very much wanted to wait. So I decided that at some point I really, really found that the legal field was calling to me. And so I decided to look into studying it. And I found a LSAT course because, for those of you who don't know, you do have to take a LSAT, which I don't know what it stands for. I believe maybe it's the legal student admission. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to make it up. I'm just going to make believe I know what it stands for. But the LSAT is the test that you need to take before you can get admitted to law school. And it's a very hard test that you have to spend a really long time studying for. So there are a lot of courses that you can sign up for that will kind of guide you and give you tips and tricks on how to take the test. And I had signed up for this course, and I was really excited to start. And I started studying for it, and I started taking the course, and I had taken the course for, I believe, about a week. And there's a lot of homework and there's a lot of studying. And then, due to reasons in my personal life, I was forced to move out of the apartment that I was in at the time because of some complications with my husband being added to the lease. And so my husband and I were forced to move everything out of our apartment and then move it back in within 48 hours. So we moved twice, and it ended up putting a very intense physical strain on my body. And I ended up, this is my verbiage, but I say that I went to sleep for 2 weeks and kind of didn't wake up. I didn't do much. I, went to sleep and woke up, moved to the couch and fell asleep some more. So I was sleeping probably anywhere from 20 to 22 hours a day. And so I started realizing after a couple days that this is not going away and this is really not normal. And it went on for, I believe, about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I went to see my doctor, and my doctor said, yeah, no, you don't seem very good. This is very weird. I'm someone who enjoys doing it. I'm someone who, I'm always somewhere. I'm always hanging out with someone. I'm always helping someone. I'm always doing something. I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm baking, I'm reorganizing my entire apartment. I'm going on a hike. I'm always somewhere doing something. And you could call me, I guess, rather energetic. I've been called hyper many times in my life. And so I was taking steps to try and see what was going on in my life. And I went to the doctor, and I had been having joint pain that they said was not arthritis. And so I had built up several doctors in different fields just because of concerns that I had about some of my joints or stomach pains or things like that. So I had several doctors, I guess, that I could have reached out to. And so I did. I reached out to my family medicine doctor, and she had mentioned, oh, it seems like you have a connective tissue disorder. And these are not serious things. It means that it causes joint instability or hypermobility, which in other words is someone who's flexible. Those people who have the party tricks with their double jointed and things like that. I always used to pull them out as party tricks. I'd be like, oh, look what my thumb can do, which I won't do on camera because a lot of people get very weirded out by. So I always had thought of it as, oh, yeah, this can't possibly cause, adverse effects on my health. Like, why would it be bad to be hypermobile? That just means I can, bend in certain ways and I could join the Cirque du Soleil or whatever it is. But she had mentioned it. And so I went to see a rheumatologist because I was having pains in my body aside from the exhaustion and shortness of breath. And I was having several issues. And so I went to see a rheumatologist who very kindly decided to diagnose me with fibromyalgia, which is a exclusionary condition. An exclusionary condition is something that once doctors rule out all other related conditions, they're like, we don't know what's going on with you, so you have this condition. So you have to exclude every other condition before someone is diagnosed with this. Little known fact, IBS is not in fact a regular diagnosis. It is an exclusionary condition where they don't know what you have, and so therefore it is a very broad term, oh, you have IBS. So just a little tidbit. I went to my rheumatologist and she decided to diagnose me with fibromyalgia, which is not very helpful. And a friend of mine had pointed out that it is something that is very inconvenient to be labeled with or diagnosed with at a young age, because some doctors, and this is not all, but they will see fibromyalgia on your chart and go, oh, that's probably why you're in pain, instead of really investigating, because it's a throwaway term for so many different adverse reactions that your body's having to so many different things. It's a lot of pain, it's a lot of discomfort, it's a lot of just overall headache. And so if it's something that they could point their finger to without having to do real investigating, it's an easy out. So my friend pointed out, she's like, that's a really bad thing to be diagnosed with at such a young age. So I want you to get a second opinion. And so thank God I got a name of a great rheumatologist in my area, and I went to the appointment, and I had my appointment with her, and I was talking through a bunch of things. And she wanted to send me to do a couple of tests, but for the most part, we still had no idea what was going on. And towards the end of my visit, I started to feel extremely, at the time, I thought it was nausea. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to throw up. And so she was like, oh, okay, fine. Lay down on the exam table and put your feet up, and I'll get you a cup of water and let me know how you're doing. And so I had just stood up to do some movements for her. And so she was like, okay, I think you might have a condition called POTS. POTS is a neurological condition that it stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Postural is the changes of position, and orthostatic is when you go from laying to sitting to standing, and tachycardia is elevated heart rate. She had suspicion that I had POTS, which is that when you change positions or go from sitting to standing or from sitting to laying, your heartbeat can go up 30 beats per minute just from changes of position, which is not normal. And the general reaction or sensation people will have is they get up and feel extremely lightheaded, and they have to wait for it to pass before they can walk, which does happen sometimes, but this will happen every time you stand up. And I had this before in my life. And at some point, I remember standing up and my vision going black and me losing all control of my limbs and falling down. So part of POTS is that you can have a secondary condition called vasovagal syncope, which is a condition where, in response to a stimulus such as stress or prolonged standing or whatever it may be, your blood pressure drops, which can cause people to faint. Syncope means to pass out. So a secondary condition of that, of POTS, is vasovagal syncope. And so she suspected that what I was having was, in the change of position, my body reacted to my heart rate suddenly going up by causing my blood pressure to suddenly drop, that I was passing out. So she recommended I see a doctor at something called the Syncope Clinic at the hospital in my area. So I did that. And unfortunately, it was a 5-month wait. And there's also an additional test that you need to take before they'll officially diagnose you with POTS. So some people may be able to have a doctor who has them just take their blood pressure in each of those positions, and they'll check the change in heart rate. They're called orthostatic vitals, where when you go to the doctor and they take your blood pressure and your temperature and your heart rate, that those are your vitals. And what they'll do is they'll have you take one laying down and then sitting and then standing. And some doctors will accept that as a positive POTS diagnosis if there is a increase of 30 beats per minute or more in the change of position. So my hospital network did not accept what they call the poor man's test for POTS, which is the orthostatic vitals. So I had to take something called a tilt table test. And a tilt table test is a very much a torture device. It is a table that you are strapped to. And I say strapped because you have a strap going here and two more going down your body, and you are laying on this table. They have a lot of leads on your chest to take an EKG while you're doing that. And then they have sometimes two or just one blood pressure cuff that goes off intermittently. And so they have you laying on this table for a while, and then they incline it to 30 degrees, they incline it to 45 degrees, and then they incline it to 70 degrees to see how your body reacts, to see if there's any drastic heart rate changes. And by being on a table, they're able to have you in a prolonged upright position without it putting any strain unnecessarily on your body. So you're in a controlled environment. So they're able to kind of see how long you can go. And so the 70 degrees you're at until you pass out, or for up to 45 minutes. So yes, it is a modern medieval torture device. So I had to take one of those, and the wait list for that was 10 months. And I was forced, because they did not have a cancellation list where if someone cancels, they'll let the next person in line take the appointment. I had to call back every day, sometimes multiple times a day, just to see if I can get an earlier appointment. And unfortunately, I just had to wait. And so I tried to go see a neurologist because POTS can be monitored by either a cardiologist or a neurologist because it is a neurological condition that affects your heart. They thought I had POTS. A lot of people suspected it, but they couldn't officially diagnose me with it due to the hospital's policy of requiring a tilt table test. I ended up waiting around for quite a while. I was not able to work. I had extreme fatigue. I was in a lot of pain. I struggled to walk. I struggled to get out of bed. I struggled to sit and stand. I struggled to do pretty much anything. And this was 4 months into my marriage. And it was very much stressful on both my parts and my husband's part because I was someone who was used to doing a lot. And with this condition, especially because I didn't have any clear answers, I was waiting around for a lot of people to get back to me. It was pretty clear that I had POTS due to the poor man's test, where I would just stand up and see my heart rate jump 30 beats per minute or more. I was stuck. I was just waiting for every appointment to come. And so I couldn't work. I couldn't help. I couldn't clean. I couldn't do anything. And it was very hard for me. It is not my strong suit to just sit around and do nothing. And I honestly don't know how I made it through those couple of months. I couldn't be around people. I was having a lot of noise sensitivity. I was having a lot of light sensitivity. I was struggling with vision disturbances. I was struggling with joint pain. I was struggling with muscle pain. I was struggling with chronic migraines and chronic fatigue. And it was really just everything all at once. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and most spectacularly. So I tried my very best to push for more appointments. I was reaching out to other people, and all of the doctors were saying that you need to increase your salt because taking your salt increases your blood pressure, which for me was good because I had low blood pressure, and it also helps with POTS because of that. So I was told that. I was also told to have electrolytes because I couldn't just have water. That would not be great because too much water can like flush the electrolytes out of your system. So every drink that I had needed to have electrolytes in it. On top of that, I needed to be having twice as much water as a normal person should. I was supposed to be having anywhere from 100 to 150 ounces in a day at the bare minimum. And I was also supposed to be wearing compression socks, which was supposed to help with bringing blood up to my heart and helping with the blood pooling that could cause worsening POTS, because my body wouldn't properly send the blood to my heart. So I would feel extremely lightheaded because I wouldn't be getting enough blood to my heart. It would be staying in my legs because I had poor circulation. So the compression was supposed to help with that. And those were all measures that kept being repeated and repeated and repeated. Anyone with a chronic illness knows that although there are things that, yes, objectively are supposed to help, they don't do as much as they could. And with POTS, it is a condition that affects 85% women. And a lot of what I've been finding, just with having spent the last year and a half, almost 2 years, dealing with doctors for all my different illnesses that I've been diagnosed with, I discovered that there's a very large lack when it comes to medical and scientific research into conditions that primarily affect women. And something with POTS is we've been seeing a large spike of similar related conditions since COVID. They've been more diagnoses. It could be that people know more about it and the education is there now, so people know, but we really don't have a lot of information about treatments. So most of the treatments that doctors will use is going to be off-label, which means that, yes, the medication has a use, but off-label means that while this medication is meant to treat, say, depression or congenital heart failure or other things like that, the off-label use, the indirect use, is it can help with X, Y, and Z. And I ended up finding a few people in my community that were willing to share some of their tips and tricks for it and some of their medications that they were recommended, because the single most important thing that I learned in this process was that you need to self-advocate. Because surprisingly, doctors don't really know as much as you might if you do the proper research about your condition. And so I spent a lot of that time while I was waiting for doctor's appointments talking to people who had similar conditions to me, watching people online who had similar conditions to me and seeing what tips and tricks work for them. And especially going into summer with a condition like POTS, body temperature regulation is not something that is easy or natural with some people with POTS. So my body will get overheated really quickly. And so in the summer, excessive sweating can cause dehydration because people with POTS already need more fluids. And so talking to people online, talking to people in the community that have it was incredibly life-changing, because they were real people instead of just, well, hypothetically, we find that if you do X, Y, and Z, this should help. And these were people who were trying different things that might not have been what you would expect, and they were finding some relief. And thank God I eventually got to see the doctor at the Syncope Clinic who diagnosed me with POTS. I ended up, thank God, being able to get an earlier appointment for the tilt table test, and I got officially diagnosed. I then didn't hear from anybody for 6 months, and I was told to just follow up. So I had no medication plan. I had no treatment plan. It was just security measures. Just have more salt, have more water, and wear compression. And that, to me, which I tried, was not doing enough. And so I was stuck at home doing absolutely nothing. I couldn't clean. I couldn't cook, which I loved. This is very cliche, I loved making sourdough. I loved the process of it. I loved just figuring out recipes. I loved having friends for Shabbosim. I loved having company. I loved helping friends. I loved going on hikes, and I couldn't do any of that. I hit a very, very tough time of just being stuck in my house, not seeing anybody, not really being in contact. I don't have family in the area. My in-laws are here, and thank God I'm close with them and I have a great relationship with them, and they were super supportive. And other than that, I really was very much home alone. And it was a very tough time. I remember shortly after I got diagnosed, I took a step back and said, huh, this is so opposite. And it's such a juxtaposition of what my personality is like and what my strengths are. Why is this happening to me? It feels like all the people I knew in my life who had so much energy and so much to give and so much to do and were so busy all the time, all of a sudden would get hit out of nowhere with this thing that just set them back. And being so newly married and you're still trying to figure your relationship out and trying to figure out living with someone who is in so many ways so different than you and trying to navigate almost speaking another language where your husband is very much a man in a certain sense where we don't speak the same language. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be so different and I'm so not like that. And I'm totally going to be able to just break through that two-planet barrier and I'm just going to speak exactly his language. And despite all of my absolute delusions, at the end of the day, we're still very different people. And 4 months into a marriage is a very, very hard time to be fairly immobile and to become sick with a condition that disables you. And I was disabled. I started using mobility aids and I started using wheelchairs, and it was extremely hard for me because there is a sense of pride in being a young person who can just move and do all the things that you need to do and trust your body to do certain things. And using a cane as a young person very much gets you looks. And I was actually surprised how much I had to overcome my self-consciousness in order to go outside with a mobility aid and get a handicap placard for my card because I couldn't walk that far from the parking lot to buildings because it would absolutely knock me out for hours afterwards. I couldn't walk more than 10 feet. I'd walk up the stairs and I had to lay down for 30 minutes, an hour, and everything I did put so much strain on my body and was so hard. And as someone who was so active, I was like, how can this possibly be? And I had a session with my therapist where she asked me if I blame God. And I got a little taken aback at first because I was like, blame God? Why would I blame God? And I said, no, I don't think so. Because something that this has taught me is how to let someone else take care of me and to not be in control all the time. And to allow my husband to be able to take care of me because I was someone who was so independent. Having lived on my own in my own apartment, I had spent so many years taking care of myself that I had to learn how to let someone take care of me. And it forced me into a position that I might never have reached, or it might have taken me years to reach, But because I was so physically incapable of doing anything, I was required to take a step back and say, I need help. Because that is very, very much something that I struggle with. It's definitely better and improved since I got sick. And it's been very hard. And I think a lot of us struggle with that, where we want things to be done a certain way because we're used to it being done a certain way. So letting someone in our lives do it differently, especially our husbands, when we're like, no, but I have to do it this way because of course, that's the way that you do it. And letting your husband do something, even if it's not the way that you would do it, is a very hard thing to do. I think it's hard if anyone does it. And because it feels like my way is the best way. So, of course, me being in charge of something means that it's going to be done in the best way. But if someone else does it, it won't be done as well. And so, me getting sick, I couldn't even be in the kitchen to see if he was cutting the onions the right way, which sounds so controlling. And it was, because I really, really struggled. If it didn't feel like an effective way of doing something, I was like, well, I don't know if you know this. And it wasn't in oh, you have to do it my way. It was more like, well, this feels so much more effective and so much more efficient. So why aren't you doing it this way? And so it taught me to say, whatever's happening in the kitchen is happening in the kitchen and you can't see it, but things are still getting done. And so I said to my therapist, I said, this is very much forcing me to speed up the process of allowing someone to help me and accepting help. And it has been not easy, and it has very much been a process. But being chronically ill has taught me a lot. It has taught me how much we don't know about how people are feeling and how people can look so well on the outside and be struggling so much on the inside. And I've seen some incredible videos online about different concepts of being chronically ill and how different visual representations of having a chronic illness can look. Where I remember it was so helpful at the time when I was trying to explain to my husband that me taking dishes out of the dishwasher feels so physically draining. It feels like every dish weighs 50 pounds. And if someone is not chronically ill, it's a little hard to explain that. What do you mean? It's just a plate. Like, pick it up and put it in the cabinet. Like, it's not that complicated. What do you mean it feels like it weighs 50 pounds? And feeling like walking up the stairs, it feels like I'm one of those soldiers at boot camp wearing that huge backpack that weighs 100 pounds. I could feel myself getting heavier with every step up that I took just to get to the upstairs floor. And to explain that, it is so hard. And so I found some incredible resources online to show that to my husband, to explain to him how hard it is. And I, thank God, have an incredible husband who is super understanding and was very much listening and wanting to learn. And thank God that was great. It still very much is hard to do things now. I've sort of forced myself to do things despite the fact that it sets me back. But I did take a very long break from work. I took a long break from cooking and cleaning and slowly but surely tried to reintroduce things into my life, trying to find things that worked for me to allow my routine to continue. And the hardest thing, I think, was how isolating it is. And it really taught me that so many people don't realize that you can expect people to reach out. And me being sick very much has taught me that, because everyone's lives are so full of things on a day-to-day basis, and we are all so busy that it's a little hard to expect that of people. But it's also hard not to, because when you're alone on your couch and you haven't spoken to people in 6 months, in 8 months, in a year, and no one's reached out, and you just kind of let the time pass by, and you almost feel like you're waiting for someone to notice how long it's been. Like, what do you mean I haven't been in your life in this long and you haven't noticed? But at the end of the day, we are all very much busy in our own lives. And that's not to say that it's not something we all need to work on, or it's not my fault for not reaching out to certain people. It very much is. And it's hard to reach out to people when you're so exhausted all the time. And if being sick has taught me anything, it's that so many people have so much going on all the time, and we don't know. And it's hard to reach out. I mean, it was hard for me to walk out of my house using a cane, even though it was something that I desperately needed. It makes me feel so much more supported and more stable when I'm walking, and it literally helps my fatigue for days afterwards. And I can see the difference of if I walk with a cane or if I don't on certain days. And when I see people and they see me using it and they just go, "Oh, is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm actually chronically ill." And the reaction to that is, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, refuah shalema," which is very lovely and so nice. It's harder when they don't have that reaction and they have the, "No, but you're going to get better, right? And it's going to go away. And wait, so what are you doing is there anything you could do for it? Have you tried a parasite cleanse?" And all the advice that people want to share. Because trust me, us chronically ill people are very much trying our best. And we're trying to find things. We don't want to live like this. We don't. And it's so hard trying to keep up with everybody else when it feels like you're not even in the same game. It feels like everyone is playing Monopoly and you're playing Hi-Ho Cherry-O. But you only have the tools from Hi-Ho Cherry-O and you're supposed to be playing Monopoly. We're all required to do the same things. We all need to cook. We all need to clean. And most of us aren't in a financial position to be able to outsource those things. But because I look okay, most people wouldn't know that something's going on with me. That means that I need help in those things, where I can't cook and I can't clean and my house still needs to get done and I still need to make shabbos and I still need to be able to hang out with my husband and try and be a good wife and try and be a good partner and try and be a good friend, because all of those things are 6 times as hard for someone who's chronically ill. And we forget that. I sometimes forget that I present so healthy when I see people, that they don't know that I have a migraine that's been going on for a week and a half now, and that the sound of another person's voice might just push me over the edge because I'm in so much pain. Because they don't know, and that's not something that we share. And I've talked to a few women in the community who have chronic illnesses, who have talked about how our lives revolve around this. And so many people don't even know. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what being chronically ill means. They don't know what that looks like. They can't understand it. They assume that you're just going to get better and it's going to go away and things are going to go back to normal. And they assume that you're just like everybody else and you can do all the things that everybody else does. And we want to. We want to be able to do all those things, and sometimes we're forced to. But for the people who have children, who have grandchildren, and are supposed to be hosting Pesach and are supposed to be hosting all these chagim and family events and making weddings, and there are so many different hats that they have to use. And so many people don't know what that means to be chronically ill and what that looks like. And I remember explaining to my therapist about the spoon theory. And the spoon theory is that people who are healthy and don't have health concerns are waking up every day with hundreds of spoons. And spoons are an energy currency where, say, an activity in your life, like washing dishes, for someone that's healthy is going to cost them 2 spoons. But they have 572 spoons to draw from. So after they're done doing the dishes, they still have 570 spoons to go to do other things. And them going up the stairs doesn't even cost them spoons. But someone with a chronic illness wakes up in the morning with 7 spoons. And getting out of bed, just getting out of bed, can cost them 5 of those spoons. Because every activity costs them so many more spoons and they have so many less spoons, at the end of the day, they have negative spoons. They have not just no energy, they have depleted all of their energy and their backup energy. When they go to bed at night, they're attempting with sleep to wake up refreshed, to have some spoons in order to go on the next day. So if someone who's healthy goes to sleep with 450 spoons, their sleep might be so refreshing that they wake up with over 600 spoons the next day. But someone who's chronically ill is going to wake up with, if they went to sleep with negative 12 spoons, they might only wake up with negative 2 spoons. And so they have to stay in bed all day because anything else will cost them energy or spoons. It helped me understand myself, how my energy works, because I am now someone who is chronically ill. I have chronic fatigue syndrome, or myalgic encephalomyelitis, which, try saying that 2 times fast, let alone 5. But it's called chronic fatigue syndrome. And I also have POTS, which causes a whole bunch of issues. I have chronic migraines. I have vasovagal syncope. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. And I'm still a partner to my husband. And I'm still a friend. And I'm still someone in this community. And I have been slowly making my way back into those roles in the small amounts that I can a year and a half later. Some people may have noticed, but some people may have not. And that's not their job to notice. But something that I was really struggling with, I was struggling with a lot of things, but one of the things that I really was struggling with was, while I couldn't do anything, it was hard for me to focus on anything. I had severe brain fog. I sat around and thought, what am I supposed to be doing right now? As someone who's frum, I believe that I'm supposed to be doing something with my life. God put me in this world, and I should be doing something with my life. I am sitting alone in my house, struggling to do the bare minimum. The bare minimum. Showering was hard for me. I had to get a shower stool because I really couldn't physically do it because it was so draining and it was so hard for me. I physically couldn't stand. And I really was struggling with the idea that I'm put into this world to serve a purpose. And my tafkid, right? My purpose can't be me just sitting around doing absolutely nothing. God has to want more from me in this world. He gave me strengths, he gave me personality, he gave me my friends, and he gave me the people in my life. And I'm supposed to sit here and do nothing with that? I'm someone who can do so many things in a day and help people and do chesed and be good to other people and support other people and help people be cheered up and help people have an easier time in their day and be around and be giving. And just there's so many things I could be doing. I could be making food. I could be inviting friends. I could be reaching out. And I'm stuck on this couch, unable to do anything. I couldn't talk to my friends because it was so much energy for me to be talking to them. And I'd have to take a break after talking to people for a short while. Even talking to people is hard. Doing this podcast is hard. I'm probably going to have to rest for a bit afterwards, which is good that I'm doing it at night. But I remember really struggling with that, saying, how can this be my purpose in the world? And I spoke to a friend of mine, and she said, I heard a really great speech. I can't say the name of the rabbi because I don't know who it was, but my friend shared this with me, and she said, most people think that your tafkid, your purpose, is this, I'm going to start an organization that helps this very specific niche group and fill a need in a community and do X, Y, and Z and, change the world. And she said, it's probably not that. This Rav said that, probably not that. Maybe my thing is to change someone's life, help them, give of myself to cook them Shabbos every week, to help babysit them like their kids all the time, do something like that. You know what? He said, no, I don't think it's that. A tafkid can be something as simple as when you're going through a struggle, say a friend really hurt you. They betrayed your trust. They stole something. They broke your heart. They hurt you, whatever it may be. Your tafkid may not even be to not speak Lashon Hara about them. It might be that in a certain situation with one specific person, you choose not to share it because it feels unnecessary. So my friend hurt me so much, and I meet person B, right? Person A hurt me, and I meet person B, and it's at the tip of my tongue to share what person A did to me. But I realize this feels unnecessary. Why am I sharing it with her? And I stop myself from sharing it with her. That one thing, not telling person B, might be what your tafkid is. So yes, maybe you're sitting on your couch and maybe you're really struggling to make challah bakes in your house or do the chesed that you want to or change someone's life. And you're really struggling in every relationship in your life. Your tafkid can be one small thing in a single interaction with someone. It might be just controlling yourself in one little area where you say, this person might not need to hear this right now, and so I'm not going to share it. That could be fulfilling your tafkid. And I know a lot of conversation about what that means to fulfill your tafkid, but when you're stuck and you feel like there's got to be more here, saying, at least I'm doing this. At least I forced myself to reach out to this one person because they popped into my mind. Because that's what I try to do. When I feel like God put someone in my mind that I haven't thought of in months, and I'm like, why am I thinking of this person? And so I reach out to them. That might be what God wants from you right now. Not that I need to start an organization or start a podcast. Yes, I'm calling myself out here. Maybe you just need to be one person's support one time and to take advantage of a single situation that's in front of you. Because why are you struggling right now? I don't know. Maybe a few years down the line, hindsight will be 2020 and we'll be able to figure it out. But right now, I know that all that is expected of me is to do my best in this situation and to do the best that I can, which might just be to take advantage of situations that are presented to me and to try my very best to handle them in the best way that I can. And being chronically ill is not easy. This rule doesn't apply to only people who are chronically ill, because all of us are struggling in some way. As much as it looks like from the outside that, oh my gosh, there's no way she could be struggling with anything. Just because if you were in her situation, you might not have struggled with the same thing, doesn't mean that's not a struggle. You don't have to be chronically ill for this to apply to you, where you feel so stuck, where I know a lot of women who have kids are told their whole lives that, oh, on Yom Kippur, you're supposed to daven, you're supposed to daven, you're supposed to daven. And having to shift from, oh, I'm going to shul all day to, oh, I'm home with my kids and I don't even get to touch a sitter. But this is where God put me right now. And I have to take advantage of the situations that I'm in, because I probably can't change a lot of the things about where I am right now. But all I can do is to take advantage of a single situation and try and do my best. And that's all that anyone asks, is for you to do your best. God wants you to do your best. Your friends want you to do your best. And your best might not be what it used to be. But we all change, and times change, and situations change. And along with those times changing, we need to change too. And all we can do is our best, in spite of all the changes and because of all those changes. And we need to adapt. And that's all I ask for, is for each of us to do our best. And I will continue to try and do my best as well. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments, any questions, you can leave a comment or send me an email at thetalking3, the number 3, podcast@gmail.com. And I hope you enjoyed.